The girl secretly swapped her dad's hair oil with dye and quietly left the room before her dad woke up. The first thing Dad did when he got up was use the hair oil, but this time, his black hair also changed color, and he had no idea. It wasn't until Mom saw it and dropped the food she was holding in surprise that Dad realized his precious black hair had changed. Since he had to go out, Dad had no choice but to wear a hat and take the kids to the repair shop. At that point, Matilda discovered that her dad had been reworking junk cars and selling them as new. Whether it was a missing bumper or too many miles, he would glue things back together and even use a power drill to adjust the mileage. Matilda told her dad that this was actually a crime, but he didn't listen to her advice at all. Matilda decided to punish her dad in her own way, so she smeared super glue on his hat. As a result, when Dad tried to take off his hat at the party, he found he couldn't remove it, and Mom came to help. While everyone else watched them laugh, Mom tried with all her might but still couldn't succeed, and in the end, they made a complete mess of the restaurant. Meanwhile, Matilda quietly sat her beside them, eating her cake. When Dad got home, he realized that Matilda was behind all of this, so he angrily tore up her favorite book and forced her to watch boring television. This act, however, triggered Matilda's superpowers. She had never been liked by her parents, and even when she was very young, she could write her own name, but her parents didn't care at all. She had to rely on herself, learning to wash and dress on her own at an early age. By the time she was 4, she was already living independently. One day, the rest of the family went out, leaving her alone at home. She made her own meal, cracking 2 eggs and adding some cake flour, and baked fresh waffles, eating the food she made and reading her favorite magazine. Matilda spent her happy time this way. However, soon she had read all the books in the house. She had asked her dad to buy her a new book, but he refused. He thought reading books was less fun than watching TV, and this made Matilda realize again her parents were not dependable, and she could only rely on herself to learn. The next day, after her parents went to work, Matilda looked up the phone book and found the address of the library. She walked 10 kilometers and finally arrived at the library. Matilda politely asked the librarian for information and began borrowing books she liked. At first, the librarian thought the little girl was just causing trouble, but after observing her for several months, the librarian was moved by her dedication to learning and made an exception by issuing her a library card so she could take the books home and save the time walking. Time flew by, and Matilda was already 7 years old. She had learned a great deal from various books and realized it was time for her to go to school. So, she once again sought help from her parents, but she was still disappointed.